Welcome to CyberTalks. Today with Deepak, and we're going to be talking a little bit about GDPR. So Deepak, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
Lovely. So I thought we'd start off talking about a little bit about what you do. You know, you're in the NHS, so tell me a little bit more about that.
So I'm the DPO, Data Protection Officer, and the Information Governance Manager for the Trust. So I've been there since July 2017, and just trying to put the processes in place to make sure that we are compliant with GDPR.
Perfect. So how does GDPR affect, like government organisations like the NHS compared to private organisations?
So what you would, so with government or public authorities, the main point of difference is consent.
Consent.
Yes. So consent, we do not need to get explicit consent. So that's where someone signs for the consent. It's more about making sure that people are aware of how their information has been stored, used and processed, purely because it's to help prevent the loss of life or to try and deliver good clinical outcomes for staff, for patients.
So do you have to, being part of the NHS, like you said, you don't have to sign up to be part of the NHS. Can they just automatically take your data, or do they have to ask for permission to take your data?
So generally, when you go to your GP and let's say you need to be referred to a lung specialist to get some breathing, to test your lung capacity is for asthmatic, literally your GP will say, look, I'm going to refer you. Are you okay with that? So with that actual consent,
yeah.
From a medical aspect, they can then share that referral onto another provider.
So are you seeing problems within the health sector in terms of data? Because I imagine that sector is quite heavily regulated from a health side and from a government.
Yes. So for example, we've got the nursing NMC, we got GMC, we've got the pharmaceutical regulations and all this. So I think when it first came in GDPR, everyone was on about consent, and I'm like, we don't need consent. It's not the legal basis that we're using. So I think there's been a step change, but I don't think we're quite there yet as a public authority. I think we're a bit disjointed when it comes to contracts, making sure that the data protection impact assessments are done on time and before a project has started. And I think that's the bit where we're lacking in an NHS.
Do you think a lot of public government companies have the same problem in terms of GDPR?
Yes, I believe so. Just purely because the systems that we have in place are actually historic. They're not fully digitalised, and we're bolting on systems onto systems. So which means it's very hard to monitor structured data, unstructured data throughout the whole industry. There's so much of it, and it's fragmented everywhere.
Okay, so what do you think can be done to improve this? Everyone knows, unfortunately, about the NHS and how the systems are legacy systems,
yes.
Right? But what can we do as people or as an organisation to make this more compliant for GDPR?
So the NHS have got a digital strategy going on to make sure that everyone's on the right path of using the correct systems and being able to actually transpose that into workable solutions for the future as we move more and more into digital. I know there is an aim to go paperless.
Okay.
So
that's going to be quite difficult, right?
Yes, it will be quite difficult. There will be still elements of papers. So if someone comes for an appointment, there will be just a sheet of paper, a skinny file as they call it. Once it's all been completed with the doctor's findings or whatever annotations, it'll get scanned in the system and then it's destroyed.
So the paper's destroyed. The paper
is
yes. Okay.
So it's confidentially destroyed.
So is that an idea that they're looking at, or
well, that's currently what's in process at the trust I'm working. I know that many trusts have adopted that, but we're still working towards that digital strategy to make sure that we are streamlined, we are all online, and it's accessible for everyone.
So what advice would you give to companies out there, from either a public or a private type of company, to help them be more GDPR compliant?
I think it's more being mindful of what data is held, and also understanding the role of a data protection officer, because I think most people think it is we're here to actually prevent people doing their day-to-day
So it's like
job,
a barrier.
like a barrier,
Yeah.
and that's that stigma that's been there with the information governance manager and previous like that. We're not the police. We're here to advise. We're here to be helpful and making sure that we are compliant. And that's really, compliancy is the best way forward, because it avoids bad headlines in the press, fines, everything that the public trust for an organisation to deliver.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so for example, this is a non-data related incident, but British Airways had a flight going from London City to Düsseldorf, Germany in March. It actually diverted we actually went to Edinburgh because the flight plan was wrong.
Wow.
British Airways. So you just need to think about what are the headlines, what are the financial impacts, and how would that affect future business? Can you actually trust British Airways to actually deliver, get you to that airport, get to the right airport on time? So then if you then translate that into people's information, BA had a data leak. They had a breach, 183,000 bits of information of credit card information stuff, all stolen. That's because they didn't have enough software, enough validation at the back end of their system.
Yeah, I think there was a few conspiracies around why that happened with the BA. Some people said that it was to do with just an employee not patching properly. I think that's what they said. But there's a wider conspiracy theory that it wasn't just an IT engineer pressing an off button.
Yeah, it can't be for that bigger thing. I think it's probably inheriting old systems. They thought they can get away with it. And
just not patching properly or something.
Yeah, and I think people are more reactive than proactive. So if it hasn't happened, what's the likelihood? And then they go on that risk that actually, what the likelihood is going to happen, and if it does happen, then there's consequences for that.
So we were talking earlier just about what we could do to improve, and you said, education pretty much, and having more funding in terms of getting out there to make GDPR more. I don't want to call it mainstream, but maybe more.
Yeah, I think looking from the outside at the regulators, the ICO, I do find that maybe there is a lack of funding there to help actually investigate or even advise organisations on what they should be doing. I know that they've had extra funding, there's more staff there, but there are breaches happening in the country, in the world. They're being reported, but I don't really see much of a response.
So they're not as active as they should be.
No, and they're more targeting the big corporate companies purely because they have the more impact on the public.
So just a last question. Thank you very much for this. It's been very interesting to understand it from the NHS, side, from that public side. So just a last question. What would you suggest to an SMB who was thinking about, who's thinking, I'm not going to be fined by GDPR? Are they right, or should they just carry on their business and maybe have like an interim DPO, or should they have a full DPO in there helping them with their policies and procedures?
So it depends really, if the worst case scenario were to happen, could you pay these hefty fines?
I don't think anyone can pay those hefty fines.
No, it's up to 4% of your turnover and 20 million euros. So it's weighing up the risk. It's the likelihood that what would be the worst case scenario. It's only likely you'll get, you'll get fined the top end, but what is your plan moving forward?
Yeah.
If you keep things how they is and it's just luck, then fine, good luck to those organisations. But people who don't invest the money in actually improving their systems and stuff, they do leave a huge element of risk, just for not only the financials but just the headlines as well that come with it, and then the reputational damage.
Reputational damage. Perfect. Well, thank you very much again. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoy your talk and your panel.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Perfect.